Are your seedlings dying or struggling? I'm going to share 6 mistakes that I've made this year with my seed starting. Number 1, timing and space. Make sure you have enough time to devote to your seedlings when you start them from seed. My schedule has been changing a lot lately and I haven't given my seedlings the proper care or time, so hence why that's probably one of the reasons why they're struggling right now. You also want to make sure you have enough space for your seedlings. While I have enough space here in my grow room, this rack is normally filled up and I don't have anywhere to put seedlings. I was going to start my seedlings in a greenhouse that I bought off of Amazon, but it wasn't the one that I bought, so I returned it and I just never bought another one. Mistake number 2, trays. There's nothing wrong with a 72 count cell tray. But there is something wrong with planting different crops in this same tray because they all grow at different paces. They all need different heights because of their root systems. Some have shallow roots, some have deep roots. But I didn't think about that. I got excited and I bought this because I have to grow a lot of seedlings because I do sell them at the market. And I just said, oh, let me get this tray. I should have bought something smaller. This is not their tray, but this is just an example. I should have bought something like this and I should have sat them in a trays and I should have planted one type of crop in this, one type of crop in the other, one type of crop in the other, because they all come with their own humidity dome. Now we're getting into mistake number 3, which is the humidity. Seedlings need humidity. They need the soil to stay moist while they are germinating. However, when I planted in a big tray like this and I planted different crops at the same time, some seedlings emerged at different times. This is something I should know, but we all make our mistakes and we learn from them. This is actually the first time that I've made this mistake because I've never planted so many seedlings at one time. So I really just didn't even think about it. But I should have thought about it. So when you have some seedlings come up with that humidity dome, you have to remove the lid. And I just recently learned that you should probably alternate. So put the lid back on, take it off, put it back on to get it used to the air and the environment. And that's something I've never done, but I'm definitely going to try it this time. The reason why the separate trays work is because you don't have to worry about the seeds that did not germinate yet. So with a big tray, you had a bunch of them pop up. Some did not pop up, but then you're forced to take off the humidity dome because you didn't want the seedlings that emerged to have problems. And that's what I did. I took off the humidity dome because I didn't want the seedlings to have problems. But then I had a bunch of other seeds that just did not germinate because it wasn't humid enough for long enough. So this caused about half of them to germinate. Some didn't come up at all. Cayenne pepper, I cannot germinate that pepper plant to save my life. I don't know why. If you have any tips, please leave them below. Mistake number 4. Soil. What should I start my seeds in? I started my seeds in different growing media. I started my seeds in sand, which actually worked very well. I started my seeds in cocoa coir, which last year worked very well. And I've also started my seeds in a soil mixture. It worked very well. While the seeds germinated, it got to the point where they would grow and start to get their true leaves, and then they would start to fail. You want to make sure you're sifting your soil mix. I didn't sift it enough. I think the screen on my sifter is not fine enough, so I need to buy some mesh to add, and then that way it'll screen out even the big chunks of perlite. I think that's one of the main problems that I also had. I did not sift. Even when you buy a seed starting mix, sift your soil out. Make sure it's very, very fine, and your seedlings are not going to have any problems with any rocks or sticks or big chunks of perlite like I did. I normally seed start in cocoa coir because it's fluffy, it doesn't have any bugs in it, but the soil is full of life. So I believe that's why they're a lot happier in soil. I'm going to start my seedlings in soil this time around because I'm going to redo. I'm going to redo it. Mistake number 5, watering. Who else is guilty of forgetting to water? Who is guilty of overwatering? You got to be consistent with your watering. I have been inconsistent. So what's going on with my seedlings does not surprise me at all. You don't want your soil sopping wet because then you can cause root rot. You can deal with fungus gnats. If you are dealing with fungus gnats, cover the top layer of the soil with sand or vermiculite. That will keep the fungus gnats at bay. Just a tip for you. You don't want your seedlings bone dry either, because that your plant is not going to thrive. So the best thing to do is try to get a consistent watering down. One way you can tell if it needs water or not, do a test. If you're not sure how heavy your pot is supposed to be, water one, feel it, and then fill it without water. That way you can get a feel of when your plants will need water. And then remember, as they grow bigger, they're going to need water a lot more. So just keep that in mind and just try to test it out with weight. That's the reason why I set up drip irrigation in my garden. So when it comes to the seedlings, I do struggle, in addition to not devoting enough time, so you're not paying attention, so they dry out, and it's one thing can compound on another. So watering is not my strong suit. If I'm really, really busy, I get distracted kind of easily. If your plants don't have consistent watering, it will stress them out. I feel like my plants are stressed to the max right now, and I think that watering is definitely playing a part with that. Mistake number 6, fertilizer. I'm guilty. I am guilty. I don't use fertilizer at all for my seedlings, at all. And while some people will say, well, you're not supposed to use fertilizer for your seedlings because they have everything that they need in the seed, as it's when the true leaves emerge, that's when you need the fertilizer. Well, I don't do that either, or I haven't been doing that either. So that's definitely something that I want to change, just because I have seen plants with fertilizer and no fertilizer. And I mean, that's why mine are so stunted, along with everything else that's going on. I think everything's kind of falling on top of it. You don't have to fertilize your seedlings in the beginning. Some people actually do add fertilizer and amend the soil, when they're in their seed starting mix. They've done that. And then you have people who will fertilize their seedlings when the first true leaves emerge with a liquid fertilizer. I do have true leaves on some of my plants right now, even though they are struggling. So what I'm going to do to try and save them, I'm going to mix up some AgroThrive, which is a fertilizer I've used, and it's liquid. You dilute it with water. From the research that I've done, I saw that some gardeners actually dilute the fertilizer down, and they are constantly fertilizing every time they water. And let me tell you, those plants were massive. They grew really, really fast. And it's something that I'm actually going to do with all of these seedlings. Well, maybe not all of them, the ones that are going to make it, but the ones that I've uppotted, I'm going to start doing that. I'm going to water them with fertilizer water every time that they're watered, and I'm going to see their progress. You've seen in the beginning how stunted and yellow they look. I don't expect every single one to make it. I do expect some of them to make it. They're kind of holding on. So we'll see. I don't like to give up really easily. And to me, if I can save a plant and it grow healthy, I'm down for it. I mean, I've done that before. I have not done it this way. So that's what I'm going to try. And then later in another video, I'm actually going to do a little experiment. I'm going to do one just like I always do, no fertilizer. I'm going to add some fertilizer to the soil, and then I'm going to do the watering when the true leaves come out with the fertilizer water. And I'm going to see which one does best. And whatever one does best, that's what I'm going to do. It's something new. And that's the thing about gardening, you're always learning something new. But for these seedlings, fertilizer water. So the calculation to figure out how you should dilute it is 50 parts your percentage of nitrogen in your fertilizer per 1 million parts water. I do not have the calculation to figure out every single fertilizer, but the Agro Thrive, it comes to 1 1/3 teaspoon per gallon. I am not going to mix more than I need, or if I do, I'm going to dump it because Agro Thrive is organic and it will ferment and start to smell, and I don't want that. Just a word of advice for my beginning gardeners: if you don't want to buy seed and start seed, that's okay. Go to the store and buy transplants. If that's what you have to do to familiarize yourself with gardening, do that. Gardening is supposed to be stress-free. While there are some stressful times, most of the time it's a stress reliever for me. So I personally don't always start seed. If it's too late, like a tomato, pepper, like right now it's way too late to start by seed, I would go buy a transplant. Like if none of these make it, if none of my seedlings want to help me out, I'm going to go buy a transplant. Because it's not their fault, it's my fault. I was slacking. But anywho, it's not a big deal. If that's what you need to do to start your garden and familiarize yourself with gardening, that's what you do. Here's a little bonus tip. If you have tomato plants and you want to not have to start them from seed, it is possible for you to take a sucker from that tomato plant and root that instead, and then you could have another plant. I've done that. I've seen other gardeners do that. So that's another way that you can kind of skip the process if you need to. With pepper plants, you can overwinter pepper plants. Chop the stem down, put them in new soil, keep them away. They're going to be dormant in a winter. And then when spring comes, you can bring them back out to their regular spot, make sure they're watered. Of course, over the winter, make sure it doesn't dry out completely. But then it can get back into its routine, and then you didn't skip a beat with your pepper plant. You don't have to wait for it to germinate. You don't have to wait. I plan on doing that a lot more. Some people say that you can get 5 years out of a pepper plant if you overwinter it properly every year. So that's something that I definitely want to learn to do. I want to overwinter, and I want to root tomatoes suckers. I hope this video has helped you learn from my mistakes. But remember, we all make mistakes. Happy gardening, and I hope to see you in the next video.